history, or this day in black baseball history, whatever you want to call it. I'm coming here from Kansas City, kind of relaxed in a hoodie today, just taking it easy. Beautiful day out in Kansas City, talking about almost 60 degrees in December. So, yeah, so beautiful day. So anyway, I'm just kind of going to talk about some baseball facts. I want to thank you for joining. If you've never seen me before, my name is Phil S. Dixon. I'm a baseball historian, and I just want to encourage you to stay for a moment. If you can stay for the whole 20 minutes, I usually try to cut it off in 20 minutes. By all means, do that. If you like what I'm doing here, go ahead and subscribe. I would appreciate that as we're trying to build a network here of powerful information. All right. So we're going to wait for a minute here. And then without further ado, we'll jump right in to these facts. Okay. So here we go. Let's go with the first one. December the 27th, 1903. Now, remember, this is the December 27, 2025 edition. So we're going to jump back to 1903. December 27th, 1903. The Cuban ex-Giants arrived in Cuba aboard Valencia, the ship called Valencia, with Robert Jordan, players Dan McClellan, Ray Wilson, John Preston, Pete Hill, Clarence Williams, Charlie Grant Home Run Johnson, Andrew Rube Foster, and their manager, E.B. Lamar. So I don't know how much you know about any of these people. This is baseball history from the past, and because it's Negro League, we have a lot of people who are just not getting this information. So this is one of the reasons I enjoy presenting it, because it's something I've been doing for a long time. So Dan McClellan was part of this trip, and Dan McClellan was just coming off of a 33-win season in 1905. And also, Rube Foster was coming off a 38-win season for the same team, and that was the Philadelphia Giants, who I happen to think were probably one of the finest teams, black or white, during this period. And so that particular team, the 1905 team, was something special. So they were coming off there, and guess what it means? If you take McClellan's wins and Foster's wins, it means that these two pitchers combined for 71 of the Philadelphia Giants wins in 1905. Just imagine that. If you think of, can you name two pitchers right now in the National and American League, no matter how far back you're going to go, that basically logged 71 wins for their team in a season starting around 1900? Can you think of two pitchers? That is a nice little trivia question. All right. So anyway, yeah. So they're all arriving in Cuba for a little bit of winter league play down in Havana. All right, let's jump to another one. December the 27th, 1912, Marlon Carter, third baseman for the Cincinnati Tigers and the Memphis Red Sox, is born in Houseland, Texas. Okay, he began his career with the San Antonio Black Indians, and that was in the Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana League. And I interviewed Carter on many occasions down in Memphis. I would go down to Memphis on maybe a weekend, and I spent some time with him and Verdell Mathis, especially, even Ernest Withers. I don't know if you've ever heard of Ernest Withers. Look him up. He's got a unique story. Now, he wasn't a baseball player. He was a photographer. And I would just tell you this. They found in the records, and this is the FBI files, that he was actually spying on people like Martin Luther King and other civil rights leaders for the FBI. So that's Ernest Withers. But I talked to Ernest all the time when I went down, and because Ernest had been a photographer himself and had taken many pictures of the Negro baseball players over there as they appeared in Martin Stadium there, which was the Black-owned park there in Memphis and the home of the Memphis Red Sox. All right. So that was Marlon Carter. Marlon Carter was also the person who told me about Jim Candy Taylor. And that Jim Candy Taylor, who was manager of the American Giants, was very superstitious. And Taylor believed that peanuts were brain food and that they were bad luck to bring in the dugout or in the field. And so what Carter and some of his teammates would do, they would chew peanuts up and then they save the holes. And on the way out, when Taylor was uh, coaching third base, they would just spread him on the field and just kind of irritate him a little bit. That was Jim Candy Taylor. Yeah, but that's the kind of things I got out of interviews. Now you won't find this kind of information on AI. So guys, I'm giving you some substance that is difficult to find, but you have to read a Phil Dixon book, and I have a lot of these things in my book. All right, let's go to another one. December the 27th, 1919. W.S. Doc Wiley married Lena B. Dabney at her parents' home in Richmond, Virginia. Now, Wiley is reported to have graduated from Howard University dental department and as a graduate in the class of 1916 and was practicing at that time dentistry in Newark when they were married in 1919. Of course, he was a baseball player as well, had formerly played for the Lincoln Giants and other teams. However, I do have several books from Howard University that list all their graduates. And in none of these books do we show Wiley as being a graduate in 1916. I have not been able to find him in any of the books. So it's kind of interesting. The research continues, it never stops. So just know that with the Negro Leagues, there's still so much more to learn and so much more to clear up. But that was W.S. Doc Wiley. Yeah, so anyway, just want to mention that the work continues, and let's continue this broadcast. Okay, December 27th, 1922. Okay, Clifford Connie Johnson of the Toledo Crawfords and the Kansas City Monarchs. Later on, he went into the American League, played with the White Sox and Orioles, and he is born in Stone Mountain, Georgia. I knew Mr. Johnson very, very, very well. Now, in 1952, on his way up after leaving the Negro Leagues and leaving the Kansas City Monarchs around 1949, 1952, he paced the Western League with 233 strikeouts. And the year prior, he had led the Provincial League, which was in Canada, with 172 strikeouts. And after baseball, Mr. Johnson made his home in Kansas City, Missouri. And once again, I talked to him often. We were good friends. And he attended Bethel AME Church. And that was the same church that Jesse Williams attended and John Buckle Neal attended. And that was AME Church. And since I was AME, occasionally I would invite them over to my church for baseball programs. And we would honor baseball players from the past as well as the present. I remember we had Tom Gordon come over. When he first came to Kansas City, we did a Welcome to Kansas City event for Tom Gordon, and he was able to come to the church and meet people in the community. Those are the kind of things that we did. And the guys would come over and instantly they could lock into some families that knew them. And these would be baseball families that would come out and support you throughout the season. And that's what we did for Tom Gordon. Flash Gordon, you probably remember Flash Gordon. I'm still in contact with him. He has a good page on Instagram. So you might go out and find Tom Gordon. All right, let's keep it going, guys. All right, how about December 27, 1923? William Judy Johnson. I don't know if you've heard of him. He is enshrined in Cooperstown, a former Negro League player, where he married Anita T. Irons, Irons, on this day. And they were married for 62 years until her passing in 1985. And I talked to Mr. Johnson when she was living as well as after she had passed away. And I know he was really saddened after she passed away. And I don't think he ever really recovered from that because they were married so long. I do know that Billy Bruton married their daughter, Loretta. And so, so this is history. This is history. And many times they talk about the players themselves, but not the athletes' wives. And they certainly don't talk about these families that were together and strong. If anything, if you read other people's work, you will find lots of things. Any crime or anything that was committed, anything bizarre, those are the things they write about. They will not tell you in very few of these publications that somebody was married 50, 60 years. You got to dig deep for that. But this is a place you can come and we can give you that kind of information. All right, let's go. And I think I have one more I'm going to do for today. And this is December 27th. And this is 1964. Okay, legendary Kansas City Monarch Thomas Jefferson Young, aka TJ Young, died in Seattle, Washington. Of course, he was born in Oklahoma. Tatum's, Oklahoma, is what his brother Maurice told me. Now, for me, when I started actually doing research on the Negro Leagues in the early 1980s, TJ Young, even though he had passed away in Seattle, was very easy for me to find because his brother, Maurice Young, lived in Kansas City, and he was one of my early interviews. And speaking of churches, he went to the Catholic church there right off of Paseo, knew him very well. And so that was Maurice, and his nickname was Doolittle Young. And he had retired from the Ford plant here in Kansas City, and he was just living out his life. And I would go by and interview him. We had a great time, always talking about baseball. I remember one thing he told me, because he had maybe about 15, 20 photographs. And he always said, if I had known I was going to live this long and this would be important to someone, he said, I would have took more photographs. And what's interesting, he had the same camera that he was taking the pictures with. And he let me borrow that camera, and I was able to get film. And I remember she's my girlfriend now, and it's been my wife now for 44, going on 42 years. But I used that camera, and I took pictures of us with that camera. We still have those pictures. And then I gave him his camera back. But we actually used the same camera that he used to take pictures of his teammates in the 1920s, 1926 and 27, 28. We used that same camera to take pictures of ourselves. And that was Maurice Doolittle Young. And then also, his best friend was also alive. By the way, hello, somebody's joining me here. And hey, if you want to, just let me know where you're joining from. I'm always interested in that because I have traveled extensively. I may have been in your town, all right? Or maybe I can tell you something about your town. Anyway, I'm going to keep on rolling with TJ Young. TJ Young also was a good friend of Chet Brewer. All right, Chet Brewer. And okay, I'm glad you said California. Chet Brewer lived in California. Yeah, so you're from Oxnard, California. Is that Southern California or Northern California? Don't know that particular place. I've been a lot more to Southern California. There's a great organization in Southern California called the Baseball Requillery. So you want to check that out if you're not a part of that. And I think they hold their archives on the campus of Whittier College. Yeah. So anyway, somebody said, "Hey, glad to catch you." I'm glad you were, right? And I'm just coming here. I'm just in here for a little bit here. I'm almost on my last fact. So but hey, I was talking about T.J. Young, who was passed away on this date, December 27, 1964. And one of the reasons why I was able to learn so much about TJ, because his best friend was Chet Brewer, who retired and passed away in Southern California. Now, Chet, they were best friends. So what's interesting is I released a baseball card set in 1987 called Dixon's Negro League Greats. And they were black and white photos, and kind of tough set to get. I saw one of the cards recently. Somebody was selling it for $300. It was a 45 card set. So, but there are enough out there floating around. But T.J. Young was card number 28 in that set. And as far as I know, I don't know if he's ever been featured on another baseball card before or since. And it was that way for a number of people in that set. I know. I don't think William Dismukes has ever been presented on a baseball card. I certainly know that Army Cooper, who was a pitcher for the Kansas City Monarchs and a few other teams, never appeared on any other baseball card, at least not to this day. So that's a unique set. If you ever get a chance to look it up, you can go out to, I tell you what, just go out to eBay, and you will see some of the cards. Dixon's Negro League Greats, 1987. That's how long I've been around. So anyway, okay, and then the person who's coming in, the second person, I know the first one from California, the second one, if you'll let me know where you're from, that would be great as well. So anyway, if you get a chance to get that card set, or how about this? Before I get off, do you have any questions you would like for me to answer before I go away? Somebody said, "Okay, you're in Canada. Wow." I just got through mentioning something about Connie Johnson, who led the provincial league in strikeouts, um, and I just mentioned that with 172 before he went over and played in the American League for the White Sox. Somebody says, I'm joining, I am in England. Okay. Hey, that's a long ways away. I did do at one time, we did a little feature that company came over from Great Britain and did a feature on the Negro Leagues. And I know I was in, I know Bob Kendrick was the president of the Negro Leagues Museum was in it also. So, all right. Somebody says there's some Shane Dawson backup pitching. Somebody says, have I ever heard of Shane Dawson? No, but I always like to look up players. I'm a real baseball fan, guys. So, hey, if you tell me something, I'm going to look him up when I get off of here. All right. So, Shane Dawson, maybe somebody else wants to know. So, he's a backup. He said he did backup pitching for the Blue Jays. I don't know. You have to let me know when he played. Okay. Somebody says they want to ask a question. Somebody says, "What's your name?" Okay, my name is Phil Dixon. I go by Phil, Phils, Dixon, like President Nixon, but with the D, Dixon. And I'm an author of many books, co-founder of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. I've won lots of literary awards, research awards, and I'm still out here. And I've been doing this conducting research on the Negro Leagues for over 45 years. Somebody said, "What is your opinion of the late Dick Allen?" Now, man, that's a loaded question. I'll tell you the reason why. Dick Allen is my favorite baseball player of all time. Dick Allen, yeah, I haven't talked much about Dick Allen, but I do have photographs I took with Dick Allen, and I remember growing up around Kansas City. And I was a Royals fan, but I was also a Dick Allen fan. He was just somebody that intrigued me. And so I always tried to get that number 15 whenever I played for a team. Man, I'd fight you for that number 15 if I had to. But yeah, I always tried to get that number 15. And so Dick Allen, when I met him, it was before the pandemic. He passed away in the pandemic year, 2020. And I was able to tell him so much about his own life because I have followed him almost religiously from a kid. And I was able, for me, it was a real pleasure to give him one of my books and tell him how much you inspired me in this game of baseball. Yeah, so Dick Allen, yeah, and I was so happy that he was able to get into the Hall of Fame. I wish it would have happened before he passed away. Of course, it didn't, but I guess better late than never. And it's going to happen. It's been happening over and over again. And I used to see Pete Rose whenever I would go to Cooperstown. He would always be at the same store, and so Pete Rose will probably be enshrined in the Hall of Fame, but he won't be here to see it. And that's, to me, that's a sad thing. And I think we can do better than that when it comes to Hall of Fame by just recognizing the people for all the things they've done in their lifetime. And don't wait till they're 400 years old. Okay. All right. Somebody said that's from Pakistan. Yeah, I wish I knew some Pakistan baseball information. Do they play baseball in Pakistan? That's what I'd like to know. I'm always interested in learning. Somebody said the fans in Philly were disrespectful to Dick Allen. I tell you what, he has a great book called Crash. And you want to get that book if you want to learn more about Dick Allen. And somebody says also, what is your favorite book? Man, you know what? I have a lot of favorite books, but some of my favorite books are my own book. And I'll tell you the reason why. Um, and not trying to be conceited or anything, but I would tell you this: when I was a kid following baseball, and I really followed baseball. I was a baseball card collector. Had a 100,000 cards when I was 19 years old. And guys, look, and when I was 19 years old, and that's 1976. You got to think about it. I had all kind of top sets and everything's completed. I had a fortune, and didn't know I had a fortune. How about that? So anyway, when I started writing books, I said I wanted to write books that I wish I could have read when I was growing up. about African American baseball players. And so one of it was my second book. It was called The Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History, and it won a Casey Award. I have the award on my wall over here. It's the best baseball book of 1992. And if you ever follow Bill James' work, he has I'm trying to think of the name of the book, but in this book, it picks the top maybe 5 books of like the 1980s, and then it says the top 5 baseball books in the 1990s. And Bill James has my book. It's one of those books. So I was able to write that, but I kept writing. I'm still writing. And what I'm trying to do is to write books I wished I could have read. And that's typically how I'm thinking when I'm coming up with another topic, a book that I wish I could have read. And then also books that really, let's see, what I want to say. I'm trying to find the right, correct words. Books that really inform you who these men were. All right. Here's another question here. Have you ever met Eddie Murray? Of course I did. I know Eddie too. So Eddie actually, Chet Brewer, who I met in this broadcast, had a team out in Los Angeles, South Central, called the Chet Brewers Rookies, and he had people like Bob Tolan on his team, Enos Cabello, Bob Watson, Doc Ellis, Roy White, Willie Crawford, Reggie Smith. All those guys were on his team, but his bat boy was Eddie Murray. And if you ever see Eddie, ask him about Chet Brewer. If you ever see Darryl Strawberry, ask him about Chet Brewer. They all know Chet Brewer. Okay? So, and you know what? There was one baseball fact I did miss. So I think I can end with this one. I'm about 22 minutes, but so anybody said, what's your favorite celebrity? Oh my goodness, there's some good questions. Well, I play trumpet, right? And so over the years, I've had a chance to meet some wonderful trumpet players. But back when I was about 22 or 23, I met a guy by the name of 2 guys. I have pictures by them signed and letters from them as well. One of them was a guy named Jonah Jones, who had a real big run with Capitol Records back in the 60s, trumpet player. And the other one was a guy named Doc Cheatham. And Doc played with big bands, in the 30s and the 40s. But when I met him, he was 90 years old, and this guy was still playing the trumpet wonderful. And I played the trumpet too. I still play. If you go back and look at some of my feeds, you'll see me playing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." But I've also gone out and did the national anthem. I've done the taps at different ball players' funerals and in cemeteries and the whole thing. So, but the meeting those guys who were actually fantastic trumpet players from a bygone era and being able to talk to them and ask them questions was a highlight of my life. So those are a couple of people, but in the area of civil rights, I tell people this all the time. I knew Stokely Carmichael. I had a chance to meet Stokely actually in Colorado Springs. If you ever see the movie The Black Klansman, it takes place, and that's a Spike Lee movie, a Kevin Wilmot movie. And it takes place, they have an incident in Colorado Springs. That's where the movie is supposed to take place. And I lived in Colorado Springs at that time. And in there, they mentioned about Stokely Carmichael coming there and how the police were recording his broadcast and everything. I was at that conference that he gave. And when the conference ended, I wanted his autograph. So I asked him for his autograph, and he said, look, wait till everybody leaves, because if I start signing for you, then everybody's going to want me to sign. So he said, just stay off to the side. And so I did what he said. And then when everybody was gone, I went back up to him, and I had a little flyer from the event saying who was there, and says Stokely Carmichael, had the date and everything. Someone had told me always to get flyers from the event. That way you can prove you were there. So anyway, he signed that, and he said, this is my new name. And he signed it Kwame Mfume, I think that's what it was. And he signed it there. And then when I was leaving, since everybody's gone, I tore the poster off the wall. And I still have the poster and that autograph from Stokely Carmichael. How about that? So when I'm watching the movie The Black Klansman and they're talking about him being in Colorado Springs, I can say, hey, I was there as a young guy because I was intrigued with civil rights as well. Also marched with Ralph Abernathy in Colorado Springs too, and that's a whole different story there. Somebody said, "Did you ever interview Satchel Paige?" No, I did not. Satchel Paige lived 2 blocks over from me in Kansas City. Let me get a drink of water. He lived 2 blocks over from me in Kansas City, and I would drive past his house when I could drive, and I would see him out on the porch. And he smoked quite a bit, so in the end, he had emphysema. So he'd be outside, and he had that tank. That tank, somebody knows about that. So I would go by and I would see him, and so. But I was scared. I was scared to go up. This guy is famous, right? And he didn't live far from me. And so he lived on 28th Street in Kansas City. I lived on 27th Street. So finally, I got my nerve up to go to the house. I said, I woke up one morning and said, I'm going to his house today. So I get my clothes on. I go to his house. I knock on the door. Lahoma comes to the door. And I say, I would like to speak to Mr. Page. And she said, he's out of town. And I never went back, and I never got a chance to speak to Satchel Paige. But yeah, that's how close I was. All right. So anyway, this is my last question here because my throat getting kind of gravelly. We've been having all kind of weather change here and everything like that. So yeah, actually, you have to read some of my books. I know about the stories you're talking about, but I have some really good stories in my books. If you really like that kind of information, and my information doesn't come from something I read in a newspaper. These are a lot of my incidents come from people I've actually interviewed over the last 40 some odd years. And you can imagine when I'm 23, I'm interviewing people who are 90 years old. And so I'm interviewing people who play pre-Negro Leagues. So that means they're playing before 1920. And I was able to glean so much information, and I'm still able to share it. That's the remarkable part about what I'm doing today. And I really wanted to know what was going on. So I dug as deep as I could with these players. And by the way, guys, since I'm almost finished, if you like these kind of broadcasts, you like this kind of information, you like this kind of interaction, be sure to subscribe and catch me again, right? And you can always go back and listen to any of my broadcasts. I'm always talking about something that happened on this day in Black baseball history. So, as I said, I'm going to give you one more, and I tell you what, I will come back and maybe I'll do my favorite movie. But I tell you what I might do. I might just say this today. I'll tell you my favorite baseball movie is a Lou Gehrig story. I grew up watching that, and well, it's still a good movie. If you've never seen it, and I'm trying to think what the real name of it is. Somebody knows about the Lou Gehrig story. I can't think what the name of it is, but yeah. So go out and look for that movie. Gary Cooper played Lou Gehrig. I do remember that. All right. Okay. So let me come down to my last event here. December 27, 1942. Byron Browne is born in St. Joseph, Missouri. That's just right up the river from where I am. He played for the Cubs, Astros, Cardinals, and Phillies in an 8-year Major League baseball career. Now, here's an interesting fact about Byron Browne, okay? After spending much of the 1967 season in the minors, on May 4th, 1968, the Cubs traded him to the Astros for a guy named Aaron Pointer. Now, a few years back, I was in Seattle, Washington. And then they had me do another event in Tacoma. So I actually ran into him in Tacoma. And this is Aaron Pointer. And so I began to talk to him and we're interviewing him. Turns out Aaron Pointer is the Pointer Sisters. You heard of the Pointer Sisters, the singers? This is their brother. And so I was able to talk to him not only about his baseball career, and he does appear on one baseball card. It's in the 1967 top set. It's one of the high numbers. And he's on, if you remember, they used to have the cards and they say like rookies and have two players on one card. And so he's on one of those cards, and his name was Aaron Porter. He also played in Mexico, but he is the Pointer sisters' brother. And I think he was their older brother. I don't know where he was because he had several sisters. So I was able to talk to him about where some of his sisters were. And one of his sisters, he told me she was struggling with cancer. And so she eventually passed away not too long after that. But the first time I heard that was from Aaron Pointer. So I thought I'd leave with that. And it kind of wraps up. We got a little bit of music in here, some movies. We got some traveling to Cuba. Got a little bit of everything. And man, I used to don't do a 30-minute broadcast, guys. So you guys push me to the limits. But anyway, thank you for joining. And remember, if you like what I'm doing, if you enjoy this kind of baseball interaction, please go ahead and follow me. And then also, guys, since we're here, I do want to mention this. There is a website that I'm working with to make a place where you can find baseball that occurred in the upper Midwest. That's going to be North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin. And it's going to be called sdsportshistory.com, sdsportshistory.com. So you want to lock that one in, and we're putting information in there daily. All right. So somebody said, Merry Christmas from New Zealand. Merry Christmas to you guys. Somebody says they're in St. Louis. Oh, great city. I used to go there all the time. And I used to actually went to St. Louis. I used to visit with Dickie Ballantyne of the Matthew Dickey's Boys Club and Tweed Webb and Cool Papa Bell. Yeah, I would go down to his house and everything like that. So somebody says, I've been watching. Okay. Well, somebody says they've been watching, I guess for the last month. So anyway, I appreciate that, guys. I appreciate all of you who have followed me and stayed with me. And guys, hang in here because I'm gonna bring more fires. I get more comfortable. I'm gonna talk about things that you just won't find it typically. You won't find this. And you can go out and listen to whoever you want to listen to. But I can tell you guys, one thing that I can say that many of them can't is that as a young man, I valued this history. I did it for the love of it, not for any pay. I did it because I loved baseball and I loved Black history. And I wanted these men to be known. And for 45, going to be ready to be 46 years when we pass January, I've been consistent at doing that. So thanks for the hearts. Thanks for everything, guys. And come back and join me. And my name is Phil S. Dixon. I'm a baseball historian. And I'm looking forward to having a great year. And we'll keep on going with this day in Black baseball history. So, hey, if you don't have anything else to do this afternoon, go ahead and put on a Pointer Sisters record, and then think about Aaron Pointer, look him up, and just know that, yeah, they had a brother who played baseball. Thank you, guys. You have a nice day. It's been my pleasure.